The elevator ascended to the 47th floor as I adjusted the cuffs of my Hermes shirt. Sterling Enterprises mirrored Manhattan through my office windows, each building representing an achievement I'd built with blood and determination. At 38, I commanded an $8 billion empire, but every morning I woke up in the same empty apartment, drinking coffee alone while reviewing reports other executives couldn't even grasp. Please subscribe to the channel and like this video for more stories like this. My assistant Jennifer knocked on the door. "Miss Sterling, the candidate for Chief Technology Officer has arrived." I took a deep breath. This hire was crucial. Our last director had left after discovering irregularities that almost cost me my reputation. I needed someone competent, trustworthy, someone who understood technology as much as loyalty. Send him in. The door opened and my world crumbled. David Thompson walked into my office with the same confident demeanor he had 15 years ago, only with a few gray hairs at his temples and wrinkles that weren't there when we were students at Harvard. He stopped in the middle of the room, our eyes met, and I realized he recognized me immediately too. "Alexandra?" His voice came out raspy, loaded with a decade and a half of untold history. My throat went dry. "David, please have a seat." I tried to maintain a professional composure, but my hands trembled as I flipped through his resume. David Thompson, 39, cybersecurity expert, experience at Fortune 500 companies. Divorced, a 15-year-old son. 15 years. "Your resume is impressive," I managed to say, faking normalcy as my heart hammered against my ribs. "I see you worked at Microsoft and Google." "Yeah, they were valuable experiences, but I'm looking for something more stable now. My son, Ryan, needs consistency." Ryan. The name echoed in my mind like an alarm bell. I quickly calculated. David and I broke up 15 years ago. A 15-year-old son born 9 months later. "Tell me about your current priorities," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ryan is my #1 priority. We lost my wife Emily 2 years ago, breast cancer. Since then, it's just been the two of us. He's an amazing kid, gets excellent grades, plays soccer at school, volunteers at the animal shelter. Every word was like a knife twisting in my chest. Emily. He got married, had a life, raised a family. Everything I'd abandoned to build this empire of glass and steel was sitting in front of me, talking about the son who could have been ours. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I murmured, genuinely touched by the pain that still shone in his eyes when he mentioned Emily. "Thanks. She was a special woman. She understood my ambitions but always reminded me of what truly mattered." The irony hit me like a punch. Emily had achieved what I never knew how to do: balance love and ambition, support her partner without losing her own identity. "And Ryan, does he look like you?" David smiled for the first time since he walked in. "Actually, people always say he has different eyes than ours. Emily used to joke he must have gotten them from some distant relative. But his personality, he's determined, smart, sometimes too stubborn for his own good." My stomach churned. Those were characteristics I recognized in myself. "Well, let's talk technology," I changed the subject abruptly. "Our company faces complex data security challenges." David professionally recomposed himself. "I can implement protocols that will reduce your vulnerabilities by 80% in the first quarter. I have experience with the same systems you use." For the next hour, we discussed technical specifications, salaries, benefits. His competence was unquestionable, his ideas brilliant. But I could barely focus on his words. My mind was fixated on the terrifying possibility that Ryan was my son. "When could you start?" I finally asked. "Immediately. Ryan is well adjusted at his current school, and a change would be good for us. I'll review all candidates and give you an answer by Friday." David stood up, extending his hand. When our fingers touched, I felt the same electricity from 15 years ago, now mixed with guilt and regret. "Alexandra," he said softly at the door, "it was good to see you, despite everything." After he left, I sank into the executive chair that cost more than most people make in a year. I picked up my phone and dialed the private investigator I used for sensitive company matters. "Marcus, I need information on someone. David Thompson. I want to know everything about him and especially about his son, Ryan. Everything. Date of birth, medical records, birth certificate. I need it by tomorrow." I hung up and looked out the window at the city I'd conquered. Every skyscraper represented a battle won. Every contract signed was proof that I made the right choice 15 years ago. But now, for the first time since I built this empire, I wondered if the price I paid was truly worth it. The report arrived the next morning, sealed in a discreet envelope Jennifer left on my desk. Marcus had been efficient as always. Ryan Thompson, born March 15, 2010, 9 months and 2 days after our last night together. Blood type O negative, just like mine. Above average height for his age, exactly how I was as a teenager. The attached photograph showed a boy with a penetrating, determined gaze that mirrored my own expression when I was focused. There were no more doubts. Ryan was my son. I spent the following days on autopilot. Board meetings, investor presentations, million-dollar contract approvals, everything seemed distant, as if I were watching my own life through a hazy glass. My mind was constantly drawn to that 15-year-old boy who grew up without knowing his biological mother built an empire while he learned to ride a bike with another woman. David started on Monday. I installed additional security cameras in the technology department, claiming intellectual property concerns, but I really wanted to observe him working. During breaks, he'd show colleagues photos of Ryan, photos from soccer games, school performances, volunteer work at the Paws and Hearts Animal Shelter downtown. On Wednesday, I made a decision that would change everything. Jennifer, I want to make a donation to the Paws and Hearts Animal Shelter, $500,000, and arrange for me to visit the facilities personally. My assistant raised her eyebrows. Miss Sterling, you've never shown interest in animal causes before. I'm expanding my philanthropic horizons, I replied dryly. On Friday, I drove my Porsche to a neighborhood I hadn't visited in years. The shelter occupied a renovated building with colorful walls and a garden where various volunteers played with rescued dogs. I parked and watched through the tinted windows, looking for him. Ryan was crouched beside an elderly golden retriever, patiently brushing the animal's fur. Even from a distance, I could see the concentration on his face, the gentleness of his movements. My heart constricted as I recognized gestures I unconsciously made when focused on a task. Amanda Rodriguez, the shelter director, greeted me with the typical enthusiasm of someone who had just received the largest donation in the institution's history. Miss Sterling, it's an honor to have you here. Your generosity will completely transform our work. I'd like to see the operations, understand how I can contribute beyond the financial donation. We walked through the facilities as Amanda explained the adoption, training, and rehabilitation programs. My eyes constantly searched for Ryan, who continued working with different animals, always showing a patience and kindness that deeply moved me. That young man there is one of our best volunteers, Amanda commented, following my gaze. Ryan Thompson. He's been coming here every Saturday for 2 years. He has a special way with the more difficult animals. Can I meet him? Amanda waved to Ryan, who approached, wiping his hands on a towel. Up close, the resemblance to me was even more evident, not just in his physical features, but in the way he quickly assessed me before extending his hand, in the confident but respectful way he introduced himself. Ryan Thompson. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Sterling. Alexandra, I corrected, shaking his hand and feeling a connection that went beyond genetic recognition. Amanda told me about your work here. It's impressive for someone your age. Animals deserve a second chance. Many were abandoned or mistreated, but that doesn't mean they can't find happiness again. His words hit me like a slap. Was he just talking about animals? Or was there a subliminal message about second chances in general? That's a very mature philosophy, I commented, studying every expression on his face. My mom, she always said everyone deserves forgiveness if they're genuinely trying to change. Ryan looked down for a moment. She died 2 years ago, but I still think about that. Emily, the woman who raised my son with more wisdom than I had ever shown. I'm so sorry for your loss. She sounds like she was a special person. She was. She and my dad taught me that family isn't just about DNA, but about choosing to stay and fight for who you love. Every word was a jab at my conscience. Emily had chosen to stay and fight. I had chosen to flee and conquer. I spent another hour at the shelter, watching Ryan interact with the animals and other volunteers. His natural leadership, his compassion, his determination, All of it could have been shaped by me if I had made different choices. Instead, it was Emily who guided him through the first 15 years of his life. Back at the office, I found David waiting in my room. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. "About what?" "About you showing up at the shelter where my son volunteers on the same day you made a $500,000 donation." My blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Alexandra, for God's sake. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Ryan came home talking about the billionaire CEO who suddenly showed up demonstrating interest in animals. I don't believe in coincidences of that magnitude. I stood from my chair and walked to the window, turning my back to him. "Maybe you're paranoid. Am I paranoid, or did you finally discover you have a son?" The silence that followed was deafening. David approached, and I could feel his presence behind me. "He's mine, isn't he?" he asked softly. I turned to face him, and all pretense collapsed. "How did Emily know?" David sighed deeply, as if he'd been carrying this weight for 15 years. "Ryan was born premature. He needed a blood transfusion. Neither my type nor Emily's were compatible, but his was O negative. Emily was a nurse. She knew what that meant. And she never said anything? Emily was a wise woman. She said some truth should be revealed at the right time by the right person. She always knew that one day you'd come back." My legs weakened, and I leaned against the desk. "Why did she stay with you, knowing Ryan wasn't biologically yours?" "Because she loved me, and because she knew Ryan needed stability, not a mother who had chosen her career over starting a family." David's voice had a harshness I'd never heard before. "Emily spent 9 months preparing to love a child who wasn't biologically hers, while the biological mother was busy building an empire. You don't understand the circumstances. I understand perfectly. You were pregnant and scared. You had a business opportunity you couldn't miss. You decided it would be easier to disappear than to face the responsibility." His words were knives piercing wounds I'd spent 15 years trying to heal with success and money. "I thought it would be better for you," I whispered. "Better for us, or better for you?" I couldn't answer. "Alexandra, I built an entire life based on the premise that you abandoned us because you didn't love us enough. Emily built our family on the foundation that sometimes true love means accepting others' painful choices. And now you show up, rich and powerful, wanting exactly what?" "I don't know," I admitted, and for the first time in 15 years, I was completely honest about my vulnerability. "I don't know what I want or what's right. I just know that seeing Ryan today, it was like looking in a mirror and realizing I missed the most important years of his life." David studied me for a long moment. "Ryan doesn't know. Emily made sure of it. She said that when he was ready for the truth, the universe would find a way. And now? Now you need to decide if you want to be part of his life as the successful woman you are, or if you want to try to be the mother you never were, because those are two completely different things." That night, alone in my penthouse apartment, I looked at the city I'd conquered and realized that every light represented a choice I made at the expense of the family I could have had. Ryan was somewhere down there, doing homework, maybe talking to David about his day at the shelter, unaware that his biological mother was just a few miles away, finally facing the consequences of 15 years of decisions that seemed right at the time, but now revealed themselves as a cowardly escape from life's most important responsibility. But as I contemplated my regrets, a new sensation began to grow in my chest. For the first time in 15 years, I had something more important than money or power to fight for. I had a chance to get to know the extraordinary son Emily had raised, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to be part of his life without destroying everything he had already built with the father who loved him unconditionally from day one. The question was, would I have the courage to face the truth when Ryan finally found out who I really was? A week passed in suffocating tension. David and I maintained a professional courtesy at the office, but every casual encounter in the elevator or meeting room carried the weight of 15 years of unresolved history. I continued to visit the shelter on Saturdays, always finding pretexts to talk to Ryan about his projects, his ambitions, his dreams. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I asked during one of those visits as I helped him clean the cat cages. "A vet, maybe, or work with wildlife conservation. My dad always said I should do something that gives me purpose, not just money. Another jab at my life choices. David was raising our son with values I had abandoned decades ago. And what about your biological parents? Were you ever curious? Ryan stopped brushing the cat he was holding and looked directly at me. Sometimes I think about it. My mom Emily always said that when the time was right, I'd know the truth. But Dad and Mom Emily are my real family. They chose to love me. The word chose echoed in my mind like a painful echo. It was the following Tuesday that everything fell apart. Ryan showed up at my office unannounced. Jennifer tried to stop him, but he walked right past reception with the determination I recognized in myself when I was furious. "Miss Sterling, I need to talk to you." I stood from my desk, immediately alert. "Ryan, how did you get in here?" "I recognized your voice." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Ryan closed the door and turned to face me. His eyes, my eyes, shone with a cold anger that startled me. "I called the office yesterday asking about the donations to the shelter. When the secretary transferred me to your department, I heard your voice on the voicemail. It's the same voice I hear in my earliest memories. I felt my breath catch. Ryan, don't call me that. You lost the right to speak my name 15 years ago. He approached my desk, and I could see tears forming in his eyes despite his defiant posture. "Dad told me the truth last night. He said you found out about me and that you both thought I should know. But I already knew, Miss Sterling. I always knew something was missing." "How?" "Because every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who looked neither like Dad nor Mom Emily. Because when I got nervous, I made the same gestures you make during television interviews. Because my Mom Emily, in the last days before she died, used to look at me with a sadness I didn't understand at the time. Every word was like a punch to the gut. I walked toward him, but Ryan backed away. "Don't come near me." "Ryan, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you chose money instead of starting a family. How you decided it would be easier to pretend I didn't exist." "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" His voice rose an octave, echoing through the room. "Explain to me how a woman abandons her own child to build an empire. Explain to me how you can sleep at night knowing that while you were closing million-dollar deals, I was taking my first steps with another mother." My legs weakened, and I leaned against the desk. "I thought it would be better for you." "Lie." Ryan slammed his fist on the desk, making my picture frames rattle. "You thought it would be better for you. Admit it. You were afraid a baby would mess up your grand plans." Tears finally began to stream down my face. "You're right." Ryan stopped, clearly not expecting my confession. "You're right about everything. I was scared. Scared of not being a good mother, scared of not being able to support you both, scared that my dreams would die before they even began." My voice came out broken, 15 years of compressed guilt finally finding an outlet. "So I ran. Like a coward, I ran and built this empire to convince myself I made the right choice." "And did you?" "No. Every day of the last 15 years has been an attempt to justify the worst decision of my life." Ryan studied me for a long moment, tears now streaming freely down his face. "You know what's most painful? It's not that you abandoned me. It's finding out that my biological mother is a coward." The word coward hit me like a physical slap. But he was right. I had spent 15 years being brave in business and cowardly in personal life. Mom Emily died telling me I was special, that I had been loved since before I was born. She lied to protect me, so I wouldn't know that my own mother didn't want me. "Ryan, don't finish that sentence, because anything you say now will just be an attempt to ease your own guilt." Ryan headed for the door, then stopped and turned one last time. "I'm going home to hug the man who chose to be my father every day of my life. The man who taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about showing up when things get tough. Something you clearly never learned." The door closed behind him with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. I collapsed into my executive chair, sobbing like I hadn't since the first few months after I left David. 15 years of success, prestige, and power evaporated in that moment. I was once again the 23-year-old girl, pregnant and terrified, making the most cowardly decision of my life. Jennifer rushed in when she heard my sobs. "Miss Sterling, what happened?" "Cancel all my meetings today," I managed to say between tears. And call David. Tell him I need to talk to him urgently. I spent the rest of the afternoon looking out the window, seeing the city I'd conquered from a completely different perspective. Every building now represented not a victory, but a day I lost from my son's life. Every contract signed was another lost moment that Emily lived in my place. David arrived after 6. He entered my office and found me still in the same position, looking out the window. "Ryan told me what happened," he said softly. "He called me a coward." And was he wrong? I turned to face him. No, he was completely right. David sighed and sat in the chair across from my desk. "Alexandra, I didn't come here to judge you. I came because Ryan is home blaming himself for being cruel to you. He wasn't cruel. He was honest. Emily always said that honesty without compassion is just cruelty disguised." I walked to the window again. Emily seems to have been an incredible woman. Ryan was lucky to have her as a mother. He was, but Emily also always said that everyone deserves a second chance, if they're genuinely willing to change. I don't know if I deserve one. It's not about deserving, Alexandra. It's about choosing. For the first time in 15 years, you have the chance to choose your family instead of running from it. What if it's too late? Ryan is an amazing kid, but he's still a child. Kids are more capable of forgiving than adults, especially when they see genuine effort. I don't know how to be a mother. Emily didn't know either when Ryan was born. Nobody is born knowing. The difference is she chose to try every single day. We spent the rest of the evening talking about Ryan, about Emily, about the 15 years I'd missed. David showed me photos on his phone. First steps, first day of school, soccer games, graduations, birthdays. An entire life that happened without me. "Does he want to see me?" I asked as David prepared to leave. "Not today. But Ryan is like you, Alexandra. When he makes a decision, he goes all the way. If he decides to give you a chance, it will be a real chance. But if he decides it's not worth it, well, you know that determination better than anyone." That night, alone in my apartment, I picked up the phone and called the only therapist in New York who catered to CEOs in existential crisis. It was time to stop running and start facing not just the consequences of my choices, but also the wounds that led me to make them. 3 days later, Ryan appeared in my office again. This time, Jennifer announced him properly. "Can I come in?" I stood from my desk, my heart pounding. "Of course." Ryan entered slowly with a less aggressive posture than his last visit, but still cautious. "I spent the last 3 days talking to Dad about you, about my fragmented memories, about Mom Emily." I gestured to the chair, but he preferred to stand. "Dad told me you're seeing a therapist." "I am. For the first time in my life, I'm trying to understand why I make the decisions I do, instead of simply justifying them." Ryan nodded slowly. "Mom Emily always said it's better to try and fail than to live wondering, what if?" Emily seems to have been very wise. She was. And she also used to say that some people come into our lives at the right time, others at the wrong time, but the right people always find a way to get there. I felt tears forming in my eyes. "Ryan, I don't know if you're the right person or if you arrived at the right time, but I know that wondering what if for the rest of our lives won't help either of us." He approached my desk and placed a photo on it. It was an image of Emily, David, and Ryan in a park, all smiling. "I want you to understand one thing. They are my real family. They always will be. But," he took a deep breath, "maybe there's room for one more person if that person is willing to earn that place." "How?" "By showing up every day, even when it's hard, even when I'm unfair, even when you want to give up." Ryan looked me directly in the eyes. "Can you do that?" It was the most important question of my life. Not about closing a deal or conquering a market, but about consistently showing up for a person who owed me nothing and who had every right to reject me. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I can do that." Ryan nodded slowly. "Then maybe we can try to figure out how this works, slowly." For the first time in 15 years, I felt something I hadn't experienced since I was a child, genuine hope. Not hope based on business plans or financial projections, but the fragile and scary hope that maybe, just maybe, it was never too late to choose love over fear. "Thank you, Ryan, for giving me this chance." He smiled, a small, cautious, but real smile. "Don't thank me yet. First, let's see if you can show up for the soccer game on Friday. Dad always goes, but this time maybe you can go too." I'll be there at 7 p.m. Don't be late." After he left, I held the photo of Emily, David, and Ryan studying the genuine happiness on their faces. Emily had created something I never knew how to build, a family based on daily choice, on consistently showing up, on loving through difficulties. Now at 38, with a business empire that didn't warm me on cold nights, I had one last chance to learn what Emily always knew: that true success isn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in the ability to show up for the people we choose to love, day after day, especially when it's hard. On Friday, I'd arrive 15 minutes before 7, and the following Saturday, I'd be at the shelter. And next week, maybe Ryan would let me take him to dinner. Slowly, one day at a time, I would learn to be the mother I never was, not to replace Emily, but to honor the family she built by being the best version of myself I could be. Please subscribe to the channel and like this video for more stories like this. For the first time in 15 years, I had something more important than money or power. I had a second chance to choose love over fear, and this time, I wouldn't waste it.